course, I'm Brian McKay, and I joined the fire service in 1995 here in Station 21 as a volunteer, as a way that I could put back into my community, because I had been part of the community doing different things, so I wanted to be able to put back into my community, so I joined, and that's where we learned how to become a firefighter back in '95, which was a bit more simplistic and streamlined. Prior to becoming a career firefighter, I worked at 911 as a 911 operator / fire dispatcher.
Okay.
And I found that with my skills as a volunteer, talking to people on the phone and the problems they were having, I found it difficult to sit in a chair where I knew I could help them physically by being on scene.
Yeah.
So I tried out for the fire service, and first time I wasn't ready, and they told me so. So they told me to come back, and then a year later I came back and I was hired, and I was immediately sent to 3 weeks of training. In July, got hired, and got hired, and then we started 2 weeks later in July. Yeah, so went on 3 weeks intense training, and then we were shipped to the Corps stations for 3 months to backfill vacations. They decided to haul us back in and educate us how to drive a fire truck. So they brought us back in for a couple weeks, and then from there they put us out to, I went to Harrodsfield, Station 62, where I had a mentor there with me who was another firefighter that had 1 year on the job, and he was my mentor, and he stuck around for 1 month, and then I had the whole station, 3 fire apparatus to myself to maintain and respond to calls with by myself.
So I first met Brian back in 2000. We're littermates, and we got hired together. Brian got posted to Station 62, 63, and I got posted at Station 60, which was the adjoining station. So I really got to know Brian over the next number of years.
I stayed there for 4 years, and what we would do is we would alternate between Station 62 and Station 63 Sambro. Same idea, we would work by ourselves, and we'd be there for the whole week.
There was lots of challenging times back then. We worked in stations by ourselves. We didn't get a lot of support from every direction. So the only support we had was each other. So there was daily phone calls, either me calling Brian or Brian calling me. Basically, how you doing? Everything okay? What did they do to you today? And, you know, I can say now that Brian helped me through a lot of hard times and struggles when we first got hired.
At that time, I was working with a volunteer fire chief. He was my boss. He was acting as my career boss. He may have had 20 years of broken service with the fire service, and his background didn't groom him to be a management person. It was more or less back then, it was a selection from the members of the volunteers who was going to be the chief. And then from there, it was a career, what did we call him back then? District chief that would more or less just somewhat keep an eye on the goings on of these little different volunteer stations who had career staff. So you're pretty much on your own, and we had a divisible break between the Corps Fire Service and the Rural Fire Service, where we worked through the volunteer system. We didn't have any access to the logistics division and or fleet. Everything was done in-house by the volunteer chief, whether it was to get the truck fixed at the local mechanic down the road, or to get uniforms for you through some avenue. So I had a short, brief stay when I first got hired. I was in the Corps for 3 months, and it was the land of milk and honey, where you're well taken care of. And you had a lot of people around you that wanted to take care of you, so yeah, it was quite a difference. And being out in the fire service in the rural for 4 years, I decided to take a secondment in town to escape the one-man show that I was working. So I went in town and worked for, I'm not sure if it was a year or so, doing projects working with the new CAD system back in '04 or '05. So that was a nice break. I was used to working in IT and used to working with the CAD system from dispatch, so it was a nice change for a year. So I was working in the rural fire service, and there was talk about that they want to start up an urban search and rescue canine team. And I was interested in dog training. I didn't have a dog at that time, but I was interested in having a dog to train because I wanted to learn how to be a dog handler.
The fire department had taken on part of the National USAR program, Urban Search and Rescue, and we were Task Force 5. And as part of the heavy USAR requirement, we need a canine search component. So it started off with the info session. Brian showed up along with about 30 others. And within a month that dwindled down to about 8 to 10 people. And Brian was one of them.
And from there, I didn't have a dog, but I said the best thing for me to do is get some training first before I get a dog, because I don't want to get a dog without getting the right dog. And I was fortunate enough that Old is your captain there, he was also interested. And as we started going to do our USAR training, he was bringing his hunting dog for me to learn how to be a handler.
He was very anxious to get a dog because he wanted his own dog and to train. And he talked about some of the neighbors' dogs, labs that were having pups. And however, I did know enough that we need to have the high drive dogs. That's for hunt drive and play drive.
And as well, Ola was in the background looking for a dog for me that I didn't even know about. So I needed a dog that had very high drive, to the point where it was almost like a rambunctious kid that wouldn't behave. A dog that had good health, and a dog that would have a good loyalty to me and to its task of searching for live people.
Finally, one of the canine breeders, the lab breeders in Newport Corner that I was familiar with through the hunting lines, they always pre-sell their pups. However, he had an extra large litter. He had 5 extra, the litter was 13. So I talked to Brian, and I remember saying, if you have to beg Heather, this is the type of dog you want, this is the breed, the drive that you need.
And so Ola said it'd be a good idea if we went there, so I took the family down, we looked at all 13 chocolate lab puppies, and we picked a dog that was the most rambunctious, quick to react, chase the toy, and that was Abby. So we brought Abby home, and a couple weeks later we went down and picked up Abby, brought her home, and she was with us for 13 years. And at the same time, I think my daughter was 6 years old, so my daughter was constantly trying to train my USAR dog. So we had to get her little dog, so she would have her little dog to train, and I would have my dog to train.
Abby turned out to be a fantastic dog, and that's largely due to Brian's training and work ethic. Brian's very dedicated, very committed, very methodical, very disciplined, and that's the traits that you need in order to train that dog to its full potential. And Brian did just that.
The first station I had in the Corps, where was I? I was probably posted to Station 16, Eastern Passage. I think I went to A. Yeah, I went to A Platoon. So I went to A Platoon, and it was nice to go to the Passage, since it was a nice station, and my heritage, my genes all went back to Eastern Passage. That's where my clan was originally from. So I had some contacts in the community, and lo and behold, one of my distant cousins was a firefighter there, career firefighter at Station 16. So it was nice to renew old acquaintances, and he was on C, Steve McKay. So, and at that time too, my dog, USAR dog, used to come to work with me every day, so she went to the fire station every day with me and hung out with me. she lived the life of luxury there at the stations. And my old Captain Larry always used to bring the dog bones to work, and my dog knew to go see Captain Larry. He would give her a dog bone. 16, I must have been there for about a year and a half. And then I went to 17 with Captain Paul Alders. And Abby came with me, my dog, so that was a good time. Went station 14 after 16, or after 17, I mean, because I know, yeah, I went to 14 because I know in the first 4 shifts I went to 3 fatality fires. And Bryson Wilson, our chief at the time, told us that, mark that down because you probably never have that again. 3 fatality fires in 4 shifts, so yeah, it was a quick baptism by fire, and we had to go down to Red Bridge Pond Apartments, I know that, for one of the fires. 14, it was Captain Larry Slomwhite, and Donnie Oliver was our driver, an old Sackville guy, and Mike Fujiwara Fuji was our firefighter. And who else did we have with us on the crew? I guess that was 4 of us: Larry, Donnie, Mike, Fuji, Mike or Fuji, whatever you want to call them, and myself. And I stayed there for a while, and then I went to 7, because after I went to 7, then got promoted to lieutenant. We know that occasionally someone's sweater would always be left behind, so it would be dunked in the water, put in the freezer, frozen into a small block, and a note would be left to where you could find your sweater. Other than that, I behaved most of the times. And I noticed the more you behave, the less you get pranked as well. So I was happy about that, in a sense. And I was always on the road most of the time, so I wasn't settled into stations like some guys were settled in for glue for years and years. At times, I think a year and a half, the most ever was at one station. I think my favorite, best call was we were sent to a house for a senior gentleman that was told to be in cardiac arrest. As soon as I came in the house, opened the screen door, he looked over at me from the couch and put his thumb up, and I said, "This is going to be the best cardiac arrest I've ever been to." So, yeah, that was one of my better calls. Yeah. Station 7. Yeah, that time the USAR team was folding, so Abby decided she would retire and Abby would stay at home.
Brian was assigned to my station with me. He had a different way about him. He was very dry, not very talkative, so that was more of a reason for the crew to push his buttons to see how much they could get away with, and they tried. And he was very good about it. He took it well, realized that it was just a way of accepting him into the crew. We talked to him about doing cooking at the station. He said that he didn't cook, but he did bake. So he would like to do baking for us. And we thought that was great. But we found out very quickly it's not that he could bake, he would like to try to bake. Some of his stuff was almost edible. Some of it we sold off as pieces of coal, but it was all in good fun. We were taking gear off one of the compartments that we were looking for to call, and on the way back, I believe it was, he noticed a milk crate on the side of the road and proceeded to stop. We stopped the truck, he took the milk crate, brought it back to the station, took all of the gear, organized it, set it into the milk crate, and put that on the side of the truck. And to this day, it's still on the side of the truck with the equipment in it, and it's actually listed in our equipment list as the McKay crate, and will always be known as the McKay crate.
Jimmy Martell was my mentor and captain, and Jimmy was a funny guy, and he really enjoyed it when I decided that I would step up and become an officer, because then he could mentor me to become an officer, plus I could split the cooking with someone else, and I could do all the training and the paperwork.
The more he showed interest in it, the more of my work I passed off to him to do, keeping an eye on him, and he took to it very well, and I was very happy when he finally did make officer. I was proud of what he did, because he showed that he had the ability to do it, and I thought it was great. And from everybody that I've talked to since he's been an officer, he's been very well respected at it, and it's good on him.
After I went to 7 and got promoted to lieutenant.
So Brian and I ended up lieutenants at the same time, and we ended up back in the Corps at the same time, and both at Station 11. I was on C shift, and I think he was on either B or D. Anyhow, being the avid sportsman that Brian is, he loves to hunt and fish and trap rabbits. While we're at 11 Station, and for anyone that doesn't know the fire service well, Station 11, we call it Outpost 11. It's out in Upper Sackville, quite a ways out, lots of woods around it. He looked in the backyard, I guess, and saw what he thought was a rabbit trail, so I don't know if he had a snare line set up at 11 for rabbits, but I definitely know that he had a snare set up at Station 11, and I'm not sure if he ever did catch anything, but I thought it was pretty funny, but it was very much, par for the course for Brian.
I got promoted to a station captain and went back out to Station 23, that's right. And then I was captain there for, it was only a short time. I think I only was there a month, and they said, okay, you can come in town now if you want. I said, oh, I think I'll stay here for a while. I wanted the opportunity to work with the new rookies. And I had lots of people. Justin, I had Chris O'Donnell, and I had Justin Dowding, Jared O'Neill, and yeah, so I had a bunch of crew from, they're all originally Cole Harbour people, so.
When my wife and I were expecting our first, Brian threw a work party for me, a diaper party, and a few of the surrounding stations all came in and had lots of diapers for my wife and I really appreciated that. And Brian was very kind. He was more than just a fire officer. He genuinely cared about his crew. He would take us out at Christmas time for a meal, and just do the little things. Send us text messages after our step levels, and those are the things I think that I'll remember Brian by is just how much he genuinely cared about his crew and his co-workers.
Another funny story is Brian and I always had hunting and fishing in common. And Brian would always stop on the way through when it was rabbit season, check his snares. So we always had the pleasure of seeing him clean a rabbit on the bay floor at 7 o'clock in the morning. And Andy here happens to have a pet rabbit at home, so I'm sure that has left some lasting scars on his memory. So it's another fond memory of Brian cleaning rabbits.
I think Brian admired his work family as much as his own family. You could always see the caring and the loving when he spoke of his wife and his daughter and his dad. He had lots of stories about his dad.
Dowding had 3 days grace or AC/DC playing. Brian came into the weight room, he said, "This is devil music, let's turn it off." He goes over, he puts on Michael Jackson. "We are the children."
Who's on in your head?
Dowding stopped.
Christian, that last 15 minutes. Still lead.
Dowding leaves the weight room and he goes, "I can't work after this. Jeez, I gotta leave." But some of the,
I guess, calls that really you enjoy when you look back at them is when you have your rookies with you and you go in and bang. And we just put that fire out where I've been to many before this where we would just be putting water on this until we ran out of water because the house would be in a big pile, where we had these nice saves where a little bit of water and the fire went out, and we saved the family so much hardship not having to rebuild their whole house.
We had a structure fire, and I ended up there, and everything was good. Everything was under control. They were doing a little overhaul, and I left. And I was on my way back to the station. I get a phone call, and it's one of the firefighters. They're like, "Brian got hurt doing overhaul. He hurt his back." So I turned the truck around. I head back to the call, and there's Brian laying in the driveway, a little bit in the fetal position, but with the radio in his hand. directing the crew as to what he wanted them to do. And he was in a lot of pain. He had twisted his back, pulled some muscles. He's in a lot of pain, but still very professional, running the call from his, pretty much from his belly. So it was kind of funny, but that was Brian.
And then from there, wasn't feeling well, so then I took a vacation, so that's where I'm at today. Presently, I'm fighting pancreatic cancer. It's in my pancreas. And right now, medical science doesn't have a cure for pancreatic cancer. So what we're trying to do is to control the cancer so that I have quality of life. So I'm taking traditional chemotherapy and trying to live a healthy life. And as well, looking back at my career, I didn't have a lot of exposure to a lot of fires, so I wasn't deep into dirty fires on a shift by shift basis. I had one in a few. We always say just clean your gear, be healthy, and pay attention to your body. I think I would have liked to have been in Dartmouth, in the heart of Dartmouth. So 13, 15. I liked the ocean side of the house, so I'd always wanted to be on the boat. I've always been interested in technology to better the fire service, and that's why I did from time to time slip out from operations and go to work in technology to try to help where I thought I could improve things. And I think we have improved it, and I'm happy to say that a lot of the technology projects that are around today in the fire apparatus I've been involved in, so I'm happy about that.
I think we can all learn something from Brian and his values and traits, and if nothing else, make us a better person, and I know I will.
I think I'm going to do more than just remember Brian McKay. I'm going to do my best to take a few of the things that I've learned from Brian and live it every day.
Be nice to your fellow firefighters and be nice, and try not to carry around pain, or not pain, carry around the hate, because that can consume you, especially in the workforce, no matter if it's fire service or anything. The more hate you have in you, the more it takes away from you and everybody around you. And we all know someone at work that has always got a bucket load of hurt or mean, and doesn't do anybody any good. So be nice.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hanging on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoos and memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life.